you and I, and it's recording right now. And
Okay.
so, hey, everybody. He's Josh Galt. I'm Mike Vincent. You're watching or listening to or downloading or whatever the Sustainiacs, man. And welcome everybody to the show. Josh Galt. It just says ag health and wellness, my brother, on your LinkedIn. And
Yeah.
it's got a picture of a place I'd love to hang out, although the size of the cricket sitting on that table on your LinkedIn is a bit large, is a bit large for me. So CEO of Unique Biotech, right?
Yes.
Um, so
That's what
dude,
I'm doing right now. Yeah.
yeah, that is so. Okay, black soldier fly larvae. We're talking about insect protein. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes. And with black soldier fly, it's basically it's waste management and it's insect protein and it's organic fertilizer. So that's the beauty of it is essentially these larvae take organic waste streams, agro-industrial waste streams. They transform them in a very short period of time, and they are then used. The larvae are used as animal feed for aquaculture or for poultry or for pork, and their excrement and a little bit of residue that's left over from the organic waste is a really high quality NPK organic fertilizer. It's called frass. So basically, from one waste management system, which is the black soldier fly larva, you get two high value outputs. And there's other companies that are working on things such as biodegradable materials. We did a project
Out of the larva as
out of
well.
the larva, yeah, out of the exoskeleton of the larva, because it has a very high amount of chitin, and so it's something that can be used very sustainably to produce biodegradable
So
materials.
but the exoskeleton of the larva is that after the larva has I guess like
Been
hatched
processed.
into a fly or in process?
No, so you can use the pupae as well. So everything focuses around the larva. So the flies basically they're not a plague. This is something that we always want people to understand is that it's not like a typical black fly, which
You're not
is
going to accidentally start the next plague.
no, for sure,
Okay.
because they
It's
don't.
all great except for, you know.
Except for that, yeah. No, they are doing cockroach farming in China, and they've had
Sure.
some issues with a billion cockroaches escaped or whatever. But with this, there's can imagine what that's like, right?
Can you imagine, bro?
No, be horrible. But these are very different animals. It's like they're just nature's cleaners, and so the flies they don't bite, they don't sting.
Okay,
They're
so
kind
these
of
aren't like the black flies or the no seams. Like up in Canada,
no,
when
no,
I'd go fishing every year, the black
exactly.
flies would, I mean, you could hear them buzzing coming out of the
Yeah,
woods.
yeah,
They would literally eat you alive. I
yeah.
mean, people get lost and die from insect bites, right? And then
Yeah, I mean the
this
mosquitoes,
is
the
not
black
it.
flies up there. I grew up in British Columbia
Okay,
for
so
the
you know
first
exactly what
decade
I'm
of my
talking
life.
about.
So
You know what
yeah,
I'm talking about. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, when those things bite you, it's like it swells up and it's bleeding and it's totally
It feels
different
like you
stuff.
got bit by a moose.
I don't know what that feels like, but I can imagine that. Yeah, that would be quite painful.
Let me tell you, it's
Yeah.
not. It's not fun. No, I've never been bit by a moose.
But yeah, so these are they don't bite or sting. They simply hatch. They find a mate. They mate in the sun. They really love sunshine, and then they lay eggs. And they lay eggs. The females are brilliant. They lay eggs instinctively in a dry area, so under a leaf or under wood or whatever, where there is something very stinky. Because generally, if it's something really stinky and decomposing, whether it's a dead animal, whether it's just rotting organic matter, their larvae are going to hatch and immediately go and start consuming that. And they grow like 5,000 times their size over the course of 2 weeks. So that's just the whole process. And we've, like many companies, are now doing it at scale all over the world, to where you can clean up all sorts of waste streams that previously were just dumped in a landfill or left to rot or whatever.
Right? It's like throwing a cleaner shrimp in your fish tank.
Yeah,
Your or snails, right? I mean, so you put a snail in your fish tank, right,
sure,
to
sure.
clean the algae. So I got wow, so wait, biomass as well. So like getting rid of food waste is that?
Exactly, exactly. So that's where it came from. This originally, I mean, people have been doing it for 30, 40 years, but
Oh,
it
really?
really started taking off after the FAO report in 2013 about insects to save the world. And they were saying, okay, so there's various types of insects which can do really amazing things for ecosystems. A third of the world's food is wasted. Um, and most of it actually, people don't know this, most of it is not like food off of your plate at a restaurant. most of the food that's wasted is agro-industrial waste, which is upstream in the supply chain. So it's at the farm, it's at the producer that is then processing that, and then they're cutting out, the stuff that's not perfect and getting rid of it. Then it's in the supply chain to distribution, to supermarkets, et cetera. So that's all sort of upstream of the consumer. That's where the majority of the food is wasted, and that's the highest quality for having potential to upcycle into something of value, which is what people do in various ways. But what we do with
Or,
flexible,
or left in the field, right? There's a bit
exactly.
that's left. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and so I mean, they'll leave it in the fields, or for example, with coffee pulp, many coffee growers will also use the coffee cherry, and then they'll just dump it back out under the coffee plants, which is one way to fertilize, and sort of upcycle and transform. But it's not as efficient for in terms of fertilizer as it is to use BSF. So the beautiful thing is, again, you get animal feed and you get organic fertilizer out of transforming that one waste stream. So it's a very cool thing that's happening all over the
So,
world on different
so
scales.
you're saying it's becoming more at scale, right?
Yes.
So, is it realistic to have an impact on the issues of biowaste? Because biowaste, most people don't understand that when we talk about recycling, the biggest volume and issue going into our landfills is biowaste. It actually isn't the plastics and wood and stuff. It
And
is
that's
the
giving off greenhouse gases and it's flooding
yeah,
and it's causing all
the
sorts of.
impacts of the biowaste is
Sure.
really the bad thing. So, is that positive impact
Yes.
significant?
Definitely. And the thing with this sector that there have been some very public failures recently. So I want to. This is something that we focus on using ambient temperatures, local labor. We're not focused on robotics,
Gotcha.
and this is something that has been a criticism of the industry, which is a valid criticism in many respects. Which is there is a bit of greenwashing that can go on if you're doing these insects in a cold place in Northern Europe or in Canada or something like that, or if you're doing crickets in a cold place
No,
as
no.
well.
Why is that? Why is it
Well,
more?
because insects require a certain like perfect ecosystem to flourish naturally, and they don't do well with cold. So temperature is something that's really important, especially for these larvae. They like it between 28 and 32 Celsius, so like 75 to 80 degrees, 85 degrees, and
Gotcha.
higher
So
humidity.
British Columbia year round, you're going to have a negative impact creating the environment for them to flourish, right? Is that
Exactly,
what you're
because
saying?
it's very energy intensive. And so that's
Yeah.
what's happened with a lot of these companies, both in Canada and in Europe, that have raised tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're focused on technology because it sounds really sexy and fun, and there are things that companies are doing in terms of genome experiments and testing how to make the insect process more efficient, et cetera. But when
that's
you're
where you get into the plagues and stuff.
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah.
That's the iffy part for me,
But it
man.
truly isn't rocket science, and this is the thing that, like, if you're using a temperature controlled facility in a cold place, one, you're probably far from the substrate, and you may have get that figured out in certain places where there's agriculture seasonally, but then you're using so much energy to farm these insects, and their whole thing has been let's be as efficient as possible, so we're going to do robotics and vertical trays and all these things. But what really can have impact and where it truly has a sustainable impact, and this is where our vision has been when we started in Malaysia, now I'm in Mexico, we're looking to do some things here. But it's let's create an entire ecosystem with these insects at the center of it. So let's clean up all the waste in a very efficient way. But when you're doing it in Africa or in India or in Southeast Asia, you have lower costs of labor and you have perfect temperature and humidity pretty much all year round. And so you don't need all of those other, you don't need that capex, first of all, to build a facility, but then, excuse me, but then you don't need to, go to all the expense of the operations in order to keep all of the HVAC and the heating units going
Yeah.
and the robots and all that. And so then you can put that at the center of sort of a circular regenerative system with crops, with livestock, and with with waste providers because those areas tend to be very fertile and they're producing lots of crops.
Right.
So it becomes this sort of ecosystem hub. Now, investors look at that maybe and say, well, is that going to get me a 10x or 100x on my return in 5 years? It's
that
probably a little slower, but is the impact real? The impact is absolutely real because then it's zero waste and you're truly transforming all of it.
so when your last couple of points there, I mean, and all of it is brilliant, and there's so much to unpack. But those last couple of points there, I mean, just talking about it, because sustainability efforts have to be, well, they have to be sustainable business models as well, right? I mean, they
Exactly.
and they have to be able to, you have to be able to present that to get funding, and not just rely on altruism, because
Absolutely.
eventually you're going to go out of business because something more shiny will come and, oh, let's throw money there instead of here.
Exactly.
Does it make it more difficult to get people who, forget about even the 10x or the multiple, right? Because I get the multiple, because you're not developing a new technology that could potentially be applied in another area, right? And I think does that lack of, as you said, like sexiness to this prohibit the number of investors or the type or investors you can go to go into this? Do they look at that and go,
It's it does, yeah, and it's
this is not
changed.
cool enough for us, right?
Well, yeah, they look at the returns, and that's why there's been a lot of pressure on companies, and that's why it sort of has come in waves over the last 10 years. And I've kind of been on the outside, well, not on the outside of the industry, but on the outside of the major industrial scaling. I've worked, like I said, I worked on the food side with crickets for my first several years in the industry. Once
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this has potential. Then I realized, oh, the animal feed and fertilizer side is going to be 100 times bigger than the food side because it still is really a challenge to convince people
Mm.
to eat bugs, right? And over the last few years, that's gotten very politicized as well. So now it's even harder. But they are a superfood. I mean, I can get into that
Wait,
side of it as
wait.
well. But
No, let's talk about that for a
okay,
minute. The crickets have been politicized.
very much so. Yeah.
Well,
So
do tell.
yeah. So this is the fun part, I guess, of I tend to be much more neutral and my political views personally are more libertarian. But I've had the opportunity my whole career that previously when I was a whitewater athlete and running rivers and stuff, everyone that I've been around in that industry, in the whitewater industry, the outdoor industry in general, and then
Yeah.
also now this with sustainable agriculture and especially insect agriculture, tends to be very much. Sorry about that. Like I said, I'm in Mexico. If you can hear that motorcycle,
Yeah, I
um,
did. It's all right.
most people tend to be very much mm, more on the side of catastrophizing. Yeah, like the catastrophe sort of idea of climate change, where we have to fix this or we're not going to have the planet in 10 years.
Yeah.
I tend to take a more pragmatic approach, which is let's take care of the planet because it's beautiful, because I love to go out in nature, because we can create healthier ecosystems and healthier food. So how can we do
100%
that?
agree.
Right?
100% agree. That's the angle I take as well. It's like, look, whether you agree with climate change or not, I don't care.
Exactly.
Doesn't it just make sense to not shit in your own backyard?
Exactly. Exactly.
Doesn't?
Absolutely, and that's the thing. So I look at it more from a love rather than a fear standpoint. Of
Yes.
I love the planet, and I love to go out in nature, and I love healthy food, and I love my body, and I want all of those things to work in harmony. And in order to do that, we do need to take care of the planet. We do need to
Right on.
reduce the amount of plastics. We do need to find sustainable solutions for food production, etc. So to answer your question about why eating bugs is politicized, when everything happened with COVID and the lockdowns, there was this deep division. Really, I mean, I'm speaking more from the American side, but really globally.
Okay.
There was a split ideologically to where you have to be in one camp or the other. For many people, not everyone, but many people lost track of nuance and they said either you are completely against this or you're completely for it. And
Mm.
so there was essentially, and when we discovered this, because we had a sustainable product that was a skincare product from Black Soldier Fly that we happened to launch in the middle of this whole thing in 2020, 2021. Great product, but it became too politicized because either you're for or against. So for many people who are more conservative, and I don't want to bring controversy onto your, you can cut this if
No,
you
no,
want.
no, 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 dude.
This
Yeah.
I'll stay away from the controversial side and just this is my view of what happened from my
Yeah,
perspective
fine. Yeah,
in
yeah.
the industry,
No
right?
big deal. Yeah.
So people who are more conservative, and I mean, I have family and friends on both sides of this ideological spectrum. But
Hmm.
people who are more conservative basically took the approach of, well, the World Economic Forum is now my enemy because they want to, do lockdowns and all the other stuff, and they're saying we should eat bugs. Therefore, I will not entertain any ideas whatsoever about insects being nutritious or tasting good or anything
Yeah.
because those people are my enemy and they say this,
Well,
right?
I'm going to agree with the not tasting good part.
Well, but I would have to say you got to go like to Thailand or to Mexico where they
Yeah.
know how to really cook them. And
This guy knows how to cook a beetle. I'm telling you.
seriously, seriously,
That's just that's so odd. It's so odd, but yeah, I understand what you're
I
saying,
I
and
do
I
get
also
that though.
understand about the politicalization of it and how that happened. It makes perfect sense, and I don't think that's a big. I don't think that's a very controversial topic to discuss about this at all because it's happened in American politics. Just look at this previous election. You were either on Hitler's side or you were on Karl Marx's side. That's it. There
Right,
was no in between. And if you agreed
and
with
neither of those were true.
any one point of either side, then you were labeled that far extreme. Period.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
that's ridiculous because most of us are in the middle, like you're talking about.
Yeah, and it's much more nuanced, and so
Yes.
you can look at it and I mean I've been like kicked out of even like libertarian groups, which generally are more open minded, but it's like, look, I'm not trying to force you to eat bugs, but I'm telling you from my own experience, I lived this for 3.5 years. I created this idea of into vegan, right? Which is like plants plus insects. So it's plant based diet, like a vegan diet, plus
Hmm.
insects as my protein and whatnot. And like, let me tell you, that's a tough sell to convince vegans and vegetarians to eat bugs. But it was a fun process.
Yeah.
But there is nutrition. Like I'm an early adopter with any kind of superfood. I mean, you can tell me like some random algae or some mushroom or like some snail at the bottom of the ocean is like a superfood and it does something, and I'll try it. Like I'll do all the research, I'll test it on myself and see what happens because I think it's fun, and I've just always wanted to,
Eat
find
bugs.
those. No, no. So the funny thing about this is I was very much of that mindset that like bugs are disgusting, right?
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
was living in Asia. This was 2015, I guess, when I first got into this industry, and just looking at some different opportunities and vertical farming and different things we could do there. And the girl I was dating at the time, like, would always be buying like on the street. She'd buy crickets, fried crickets, or silkworm pupae, or different things, and she'd just be eating them like a snack. And I'm like, that looks so disgusting. I can't believe you eat that stuff.
I mean, does it look like a deep fried
Yeah,
cricket?
it
Like
just
I'm
looks like a
thinking
cricket.
in my
Yeah,
head.
it still has the legs on it, everything. It's a cricket that's just deep fried, and they put some other ingredients on it too, like. But I thought it was gross.
MSG.
A lot of MSG. That's exactly right. Yeah, it's their little secret.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like I thought it was so disgusting. So I understand the natural revulsion that most people in the West have towards eating bugs. It's just
Wait,
not
since you were a
something
little
that.
kid, you were taught, oh, bug, kill it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Bugs are gross. Get that out of your mouth. Keep it away from you. Yeah, you're trained.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because she was eating them and I was doing this research and I came across a bunch of research about insect protein and how it like is actually quite nutritious and it can be very sustainable to farm, etc. So I went down the whole, Google rabbit hole for 4 or 5 hours, and then next thing you know, I was on the street. I'm like, okay, buy me some crickets, let's try this. And I was pleasantly surprised. Like they actually tasted pretty good. They were
Really?
Yeah, they were kind of crunchy, they tasted good. And so then from there it just sort of expanded over the next couple of years.
So wait, and I want to go there. I'm just curious. Is this a was this a relatively new thing in Thailand and in Malaysia, or has this been part of their culture forever?
It's been part of their culture forever.
Okay, I did
Yeah,
not know that. I didn't know that.
yeah, it really has. So that's something. I mean, the two biggest countries. I mean, there's the Mopani worm in South Africa as well, but in terms of like real touristic places, the two biggest ones would be Thailand and Mexico, probably for where people may have tried bugs as a tourist. But it's been around culturally for a very long time.
Gotcha. Okay.
Um, Mexico has chapulines. They have chicatana ants. They have the gusano de maguey, which first got famous in the bottles of tequila and mezcal
Oh yeah, yeah,
50,
yeah,
60 years ago.
yeah,
It was a
yeah.
marketing ploy, but the insects themselves, the gusano de maguey rojo, is actually really, really tasty. Again,
Wow.
it's
Yeah. See,
just
my kids are still grossed out when I have escargot or something. Just eating snails grosses them out. So.
when and it's just it is a perspective thing. I mean I totally get it because I was there. But once I tried it, and it was so for me it was like two things. It's one, this is really nutritious according to all these studies that I'm reading. Two, supposedly if you get it from somebody that knows how to cook it or knows how to prepare it properly, it's going to taste good. I'm like, okay, I'm willing to, try some cultural dishes, whatever. But then the third thing is like you can farm them very sustainably. So all
Mm.
three of those together for me were like, okay, I want to, get involved in this. And at the time, because like that report came out in 2013, so it was just starting sort of like this real boom of this is a new novel protein source, alternative protein. It's sustainable, it's healthy, etc. But after a few years of that and just realizing what a long road it's going to be to convince people to eat bugs, um, and
Well,
bless your
there
hearts,
was
the people that are
wasn't
still
there a
doing it.
couple companies turning crickets into flour? Wasn't it cricket
Yeah.
flour?
Yeah. That's we did that as well. I worked with the NGO in Cambodia,
Okay.
and we did that.
And
It's
even
really
that
easy.
was difficult to convince people because that I could
Yeah.
probably hey, here's this brownie or something like that, or something that
Yeah.
doesn't look like a cricket but it's got cricket flour. That I could see as a starter for me.
Absolutely, and it tastes really. It's a little bit nutty, sort of caramel, chocolatey,
Oh
um,
wow, that
and
tastes
you,
good.
yeah, it tastes really good. So you can make brownies or bread or muffins or cookies or different things. We would just put it in smoothies. When I was doing
Oh yeah, that's right. And at night, like a post workout energy drink type of thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the benefit of cricket protein is it has prebiotics in it. And so as far as the gut brain connection and your digestion, it digests more slowly than whey protein, for example, which kind of
Okay.
spikes your insulin and
Yeah. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
digests quickly, but it does that to your blood sugar. So cricket protein is it's a nice sort of protein additive for smoothies that doesn't it's not going to
Did
spike
you
your blood sugar.
notice? Were you aware? I mean, because you before you started eating this quite a bit, right? Did it become a staple in your diet?
Yeah, it did. It
And did you
became
notice any? Did you would you noticeably feel better, or was it just like, okay, I'm just eating this and getting my nutrition from this? Was there any noticeable difference in anything? I mean, did you sprout wings or chirp at night or anything like that?
There were some differences on the negative side,
Hmm.
and I would attribute that more to the being full vegan. I learned a lot actually about
Oh,
phytonutrients and anti-nutrients and different things and why you're supposed to steam your green leafy vegetables because they block mineral absorption if you just eat too much raw spinach or raw broccoli.
oh wow, you're into this way too deep. No, I'm
Yeah,
just kidding.
so but
But
it
you're
was
into this pretty
fascinating
deep. I didn't know that, right? I mean, so just raw green vegetables is not necessarily it's better to steam them. Let's put
to
it that way.
steam them
It's not, they're not
exactly.
bad for you. It's just better to steam them.
To steam or sprout. So, for example, quinoa. I used to eat a lot of quinoa, and I learned because I started having teeth problems. That's what it was. And so I went down this road of, well, so why am I not getting enough calcium even if I'm eating, so much insect protein, which does have calcium in it? But the realization was because everything else was like raw vegetables, and that's blocking any calcium or any minerals that I might get from the crickets is
Oh
being
wow.
blocked by the raw vegetables, the quantity of raw vegetables I was eating.
So by preparing them somewhat,
Yes,
that helped.
exactly. So whether it's legumes or quinoa, or you can sprout those, soak them for 12 hours or soak them overnight before you prepare them,
Do
or
you
steam them.
recall? Are you old enough to recall when your parents would say, if you cook if you cook the vegetables, you're losing all the vitamins out of
Oh,
them.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And that so then it becomes a question of heat, like high heat and where those levels are in temperature,
Okay.
which do impact whether it's vitamins or living
Okay.
enzymes
So
in a
let me
food,
ask you
etc.
this: if I'm wilting spinach, is that good, or am I going too far?
You shouldn't, yeah, you can wilt it, but you shouldn't necessarily boil it for
No,
five or
I'm
ten
not
minutes.
boiling. Just a little bit of
Just
olive oil,
warming it.
saute it soft.
Exactly. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
it. Yeah.
That I mean, and you could probably get, in a laboratory, they could probably say this is the exact temperature where things
Yeah,
start
yeah, yeah. But I
changing,
mean, we're not doing
oxidizing.
that. I'm not putting a meat thermometer in my wilted spinach. That's not happening.
Right. But if you're just steaming it or sautéing it or
Yeah.
something,
All
that's
right, we're
actually
way
supposed
off.
to be
We're way off
more
track now
efficient.
because we got to get some more information. Then I want
Okay.
some recipes for crickets or black flies or something. So you're doing the cricket thing, and you started. So and then you moved on from there to black flies. Why is that? I mean, well, you said, I guess if we back up just a little bit, you had said that as far as the impact overall to the environment, the black fly soldier flies have a better impact all the way around than just growing crickets and eating them.
Yes,
Not
correct.
that growing crickets and eating them is bad, but it's a good nutrition source.
Hmm.
And it does, I guess it's good because it relieves the dependence on other proteins that are really not helping us because of the massive growth in consumption of beef, right?
Yeah, and I mean,
And that
there's
type of thing.
some beautiful stories of how the social impact of helping people grow crickets. I mean, I can get into
Oh
that, but just
yeah,
to answer your
okay.
question, the the biggest reason is because black soldier fly larvae consume almost everything. Not real cellulose, like they don't eat bark. They're not going to
Yeah,
eat pineapple skins or like cassava, that kind of stuff. But they
yeah,
eat anything that's a softer sort of organic waste material that's able to rot and break down.
gotcha.
Crickets, on the other hand, are very finicky. They're sustainable in the sense of farming, 1 kilo of protein, how much water it uses, how much waste there is, etc.
Yeah.
But they do require a little bit more specialized diet. They're a little more fragile in terms of farming them.
Mm.
And so it's more of a nutrition thing where I don't see much potential on the animal feed side for doing crickets because it's much more expensive. It's more cost prohibitive than doing black soldier fly, which have a
Mm.
much broader capacity to clean up waste, organic waste, whereas
Yeah.
crickets don't. And
Yeah,
so
just impression from what you're saying, it would appear that the black soldier fly larva is you're not doing any negative impact. You just here you go, eat all
exactly.
this stuff that's already bad. Crickets, you may be consuming a little more water than you want to, or
It's a longer
that type of
process as well.
yeah.
It takes, like 45 days to really go through the whole process with the crickets, whereas it's 15
Okay.
days, 13 to 15 days with black soldier fly larvae. So it's more efficient all the way around. The biggest difference why there's sort of a switch in which industry you're in. So I started with crickets on the food side, right? And all the other edible insects. But people don't want to eat larvae necessarily. They don't want to eat grubs. Or if we take it even one step further in terms of the word, they don't want to eat maggots,
Yeah, no, no, definitely don't want to eat
right?
maggots.
So
Larva is just a good word for maggots, right?
yes, exactly. Whereas people, crickets, it's a little bit more like it's the shrimp, it's a land shrimp, it's more palatable.
Land shrew. It really is,
It is.
right?
Yeah. It's part of Pancrostacea. Like it's all basically the same
It's all
ingredient.
basically
Yeah.
the same thing. Yeah, I mean, you'll suck the head of a crawfish, but you're not going to eat a cricket, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
And that's sort of one of the arguments about eating them. So with the larva, it's obviously you can do it on a much bigger scale, much more efficiently, but it's not going to be targeted at people. You want to target the food that people want to eat, which is shrimp and fish and chicken and pork. And so if you can use that I mean, the studies are very conclusive that you get a higher feed conversion ratio with livestock by using black soldier fly. There's a lowered mortality, especially with young piglets or young chicks with chickens, because it helps build the immune system. It helps with the digestive system, etc.
really
Yeah, and
so.
so
Well, the digestive system is also very important, right? Because if you can improve that, that's the big methane thing. People don't understand it. It's the bovine burps
yeah, yeah,
that is the methane, right?
and cows are a different thing because they are consuming just grass, whereas
Yeah.
an animal like pigs or chickens, which are just modern day little mini dinosaurs, I mean they consume everything. They're cannibalistic to the, almost, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, but yes, it's the same sort of rationale is okay, so if the oil, which is high in lauric acid, same as coconut oil, if the oil in these larvae is helping the digestive system, then that animal is going to be healthier. It's going
Mm.
to absorb the nutrients from the other feed that they're being given, because you don't give them 100% black soldier fly. Like you give them 20, 25% is sort of the ideal range, a quarter of their food of being
Oh
fed to
wow.
the larva. Um, then you're able to really have an impact. And so for an industrial scale pig farm, for example, if you can, lower your mortality 5%, that's massive.
Oh yeah,
Five
no,
to
that
ten
is
percent, right?
massive. That's
So,
massive.
and then you also have the organic fertilizer, which is there's been more focus on the animal feed side, but we're actually looking at a lot of different things that could be done more with the fertilizer side and just creating ecosystems regionally.
Well, you so the black soldier fly, you're growing it, you're eating it, right? I mean, it's food.
No,
You're only growing it for the nutrients for livestock and for fertilizer,
correct. Yeah,
not
yeah.
the food
You
side.
you can
Okay.
eat them, because I was when I sort of switched from food to feed, I was still doing the into vegan thing, and so I don't mind microwaved dried black soldier fly larvae. Like they puff up, they're a little bit oily. No, they're seriously good. I know it sounds crazy, but they seriously taste
I don't
pretty
mind
good.
it.
But it depends on what they eat.
Sorry,
Depends on what
Josh.
they
All I
eat.
got is black soldier fly larvae. I can microwave some. Yeah, no problem.
Sounds
They can have it.
great, yeah. Well, it
Yeah,
depends
that's
on what
cool.
they ate, though. I mean,
Oh,
if you fed them dead animal carcasses or manure, they're going to taste really, really bitter. And
oh, wow. Okay, yeah. So you don't want to harvest them off of a pile of cow dung and then eat them.
right, exactly. So when I was still doing this, I might be the
I
only
mean,
person in
you
the
see,
industry.
you go to this, you go to like the store. You can get grass fed beef, or you could get, you know,
Make sure that your larva, you make sure you know what they were fed on, right? You need that
what's the
supply chain
best feed?
traceability.
What's the best feed of a larva for taste?
Something more neutral.
Okay.
Things that they consume that aren't going to give them a lot of taste. So whether that's soy waste, whether
Okay,
that's
gotcha, gotcha.
vegetable waste,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
brewery spent grains is a really really good one
Oh wow,
for
okay.
larvae. Yeah, they consume that as well. So then, I mean, I went through and
It's
I
the
would
same
often
thing with
test
crickets. If you feed them certain things, they taste a certain way. Or well, crickets you said
a
are very
little bit.
finicky. They won't eat a whole lot of different things.
Yeah,
What do
exactly.
crickets eat? Just leaves?
Yeah,
Just
mostly
vegetation?
leafy vegetables.
Yeah.
They'll eat some. You can do some carrots or some watermelon, some pumpkin, that kind of thing.
Gotcha, gotcha,
But it's
gotcha.
it's more
So
leafy vegetables.
why black fly larvae is focused on feed and not food? Why the difference? Why is it not one?
Because of economies of scale and also because of the difficulty to break into the consumer goods market with
Oh,
maggots, basically.
yeah,
I
I
think that's
got you.
really where it's at. So for because there's going to be, there has been and there will continue to be this curve of education for consumers and getting consumers to be open to eating bugs. Something as extreme, at least in terms of edible insects, something as extreme as a maggot, a larva, is sort of one of the tail end things that people are going to accept as food. Whereas the feed market is massive, right? You have hundreds of millions of dollars per year or tons actually, so it's way more than that, but hundreds of millions of tons of fish meal and soy meal that's
Mm,
produced for the feed market,
just for the feed market.
just for
Yeah.
the feed market. Yeah, and so the goal has really been, okay, there's this massive amount of waste. A third of the planet's food is wasted, most of it upstream in the supply chain, which means we can take that, upcycle it, transform it into really high quality animal feed, and we can make a dent in the fish meal market and the soy meal market with these insects. And so that's why the focus has been for pretty much everybody with black soldier fly larvae. It's been on the animal feed and fertilizer markets, just
Yeah,
much
I
bigger.
mean, it solves it solves problems all over the place is what it sounds like, right? I mean,
Yeah,
because you've got this waste that you need to have consumed in some way, or you need to deal with it in some way, whether you're burning it or burying it or whatever you're going to do it, composting, etc. And you're consuming that, and then you're producing a protein that prevents you from extracting from another part of agriculture, whether it be fish feed, like you're saying, or whatever it happens to be, getting into this and doing that. I mean, I was just talking to a guy about seaweed farming,
Uh huh.
right? And they're doing seaweed farming, which is great for animal feed as well, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
and fertilizer type of stuff, right? And it's great for the ocean environment because it's a sustainable rotating crop, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't extract anything as far as nutrients. It's actually creating more nutrients even while you're extracting it from the environment. It sounds like that's really what's going on here, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And with seaweed, that's actually also a really good sustainable crop, whether
Yeah.
it's algae or it's actual seaweed. We looked
Well,
at
yeah,
what
this
we
was
could
algae
do.
actually. These were algae seaweeds that we were talking about. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because you can do freshwater algae type of thing, which is going to be a good protein source. You can do with the seaweed. A lot of that does turn into fertilizer. We looked at what we could do to clean up the sargassum. Sargassum. I always
Yeah.
think about it in Spanish. Sargasso in Spanish, because it's been this massive problem on the Riviera Maya part of Mexico, on the peninsula there,
Oh,
and
really?
also across the Caribbean. Yeah. So
Oh,
like
yeah. No, that's the stuff. The waves of it coming across.
yes.
Right. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
it's a type of algae seaweed that we wanted to see. Okay, can will black soldier fly larvae eat this because it is nutritious and people have used it for
Uh huh.
fertilizer or animal feed. It's just too salty. The sodium content is too high, and so at least the
Mm.
studies that we did over the course of a year didn't really pan out. But
Raising their blood pressure too high with the sodium.
yeah, they didn't do well. Unfortunately, because that would be a good way to clean it up. But I mean, that is something that people are making bricks. There's a company that makes bricks out of it, like recycled, um,
Really?
by drying. They mix it with clay and they dry the sargasso, and then they grind it all up and turn it into this powder. And it makes for more sustainable bricks that supposedly weather really well, and they're more soundproof. They're more like
Hey.
temperature control. It's cool what's happening with all of these different things that people are racing to find solutions for these problems.
Well, it's interesting to me that the solutions have, like in this case, the solution has been known for centuries,
Hmm.
right? But just not spread everywhere due to cultural differences,
Yeah.
right? I mean that's a really interesting. I mean, at least with the crickets, right? Now these black soldier flies, is that something that's been part of the culture for a long, long time, or is this just through science? Not just through science, but is it just recently because of
Part of it
scientific
is.
investigation?
Yeah, part of it is because of investigation, and so it's twofold. And this is where I mean, there can be criticism of sustainable sectors that fail, and you can look at that and be like, well, these investors put all this money into cell cultured meats, for example, and most of those companies went bust, or they put so much money into black soldier fly, and some of these companies haven't made it. Why should we keep investing in that? And the real answer is what you just said, that even if the company doesn't necessarily survive as a company, so maybe those investors are bummed out, they're still doing a ton of really important research.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
black soldier fly's been around for a long time, and like smallholder farmers maybe would catch flies or grubs in their bucket in their compost bin. So people are doing it on a small scale, but they don't really have the scientific knowledge that has exploded over the last decade
Mm.
because of the amount of money invested in the industry. I think that's probably the biggest benefit, no matter what happens with the companies and no matter how they pivot and all of that that's happening in our industry. The research that's come out is incredible about what they really do and can do, and how you can use them, and the benefits of the fertilizer and all this thing.
Yeah, the benefits of the fertilizer and utilizing, obviously, organic fertilizers and not chemicals, et cetera, is better. It's got to be better. I mean, there's very few cases that I've read where an organic was actually worse. And I think it was like an earthworm study or something like that,
Hmm.
where actual, yeah, the polymer fibers in the dirt um, were less impactful than biodegradable fibers in the dirt on populations of earthworms for some reason.
Okay.
Anyway, I won't get into the science there because people be bored stiff. But we can geek over that over that later. But so I'm interested in the volume, right? Is and I get all the volume or the benefits that you're talking about the black fly larvae, soldier fly larvae. Is this a hey? I've got this bio waste issue. Is it a viable solution to get rid of it, and at what level? In other words, this farm produces X amount of wasted food, like you talked about. A third of third of the world's food is wasted, and it's mostly upstream, right? What is that volume to production of flies, right? Is it a viable solution, or is it just like a percentage, which isn't bad? I mean, it's always a solution, but is it a like viable, like, hey, we could really fix this problem and
Yes.
that problem together?
Yeah, absolutely. So depending on what you mean by bio waste, I assume you're not like don't mean biohazard, but just organic
Yeah,
type
yeah, yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
bio
yeah, yeah,
waste.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Or organic fiber waste from food production.
Yes.
That's
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So BSF are not, and this is a positive thing, but their feed conversion ratio is not what you would want from livestock production. But that's a
Mm.
good thing because you want them to consume much more than their weight. So, for example, a conservative estimate, and it depends based on the substrate, but a conservative estimate is 8 to 1. So, for every 8 tons of waste that you have, you get 1 ton of live larvae.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, that's the ratio you want in this case.
Exactly. So in this case, that's actually a good thing. So some, depending on what they eat, sometimes it can be 5 to 1, but it's sort of between that range, 5 to 1 to 8 to 1.
Oh
And
wow.
so you can, and then when you look at it, so that's live larva. So if you're going to then dry that larva and turn it into protein, you're going to lose another 70, maybe 75% if you're defatting them of the weight. So then you're only getting 300 kilos, let's say, from 8 tons of waste. And yet the
Mm.
market for those 300 kilos is in the thousands of tons.
Mm.
And so
Mm.
you can see that there definitely is potential for a company to work at an industrial level.
So yes, because the demand is far greater than the
Exactly.
source.
Exactly.
That
And
that
usually companies are attempt to be efficient in terms of how much waste they're producing.
yeah.
But, whether it's potato peelings for a potato chip manufacturer and like they don't have really a solution for all those peelings, black soldier fly love them. So if they have a few tons a day that they're producing at their potato chip factory from all those potatoes, that's a great substrate that then produces, a few hundred kilos or a ton.
All those peelings. Yeah.
Exactly.
Which actually, if you deep fry those peelings, is fantastic.
That could be another sort of upcycling business that could feed into it. Exactly.
Throw in a couple crickets, you got yourself a
Yeah.
salad, my
Yeah.
friend. A
Actually,
really nice
caramelized crickets are the best.
caramelized cricket, low and slow, right, with some
Yeah,
olive
yeah,
oil. There
butter,
you go.
brown sugar. Oh man, it's the
It's better. You know what? I'm going to use that as a topping of my sweet potato casserole.
best. As long as you didn't tell people what it was, they're like, why does this have a face on it? As long as they didn't
Yeah.
notice,
What
they would
is
love it.
this? Why are there antennae sticking out of this thing?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, so what the hell were we talking about?
It goes all over with insects because there's just so many different things that whether it's food or feed or fertilizer. That's the beauty of it. That's why I like it though.
Oh yeah, I know. I was going to ask you some insight onto what these farms look like. Right,
Uh-huh.
I go from like a field of stuff with just flies buzzing everywhere, and people scraping maggots off of just slop that's disgusting with hip waders on, to a warehouse that's got a few fans going and
Mhm.
an industrialized type of process. What does a farm look like? I mean,
It really
what,
depends on where you are. So, for example, in Europe, they're using temperature controlled facilities, vertical
yeah,
farming in trays with robots and whatnot. It's
it's
it's what
not
you'd
the best
expect.
impact, right? Yeah.
Correct. But it's what you'd expect from that sort of an industrialized setup in Europe or in America.
Vertical black fly soldier larvae.
Trays. Yeah. So it's like it'll be a tray that's, this deep, and you see. So, 10, 15 centimeters deep or so. And everybody has different sizes and their proprietary methods or whatever. But essentially they're stacking them up for, 3, 4, 5, 6 meters, depending on how big their facility is. Then you're going to have other areas. There is a little bit of what you said, even in those places. I'm sure where you have at least one guy in hip waders who's having to deal with the substrate coming in,
Yeah,
sort of
somebody's got the bad job
sort of
somewhere.
deal with that.
Yeah,
Um,
somebody's a newbie.
exactly. Yeah, they got to deal with the waste that comes in. They got to deal with the smelly part,
Yeah.
smelly, sticky part. But in a place like Indonesia or Malaysia where we are, it's a and in China as well. Many of the more tropical places that are using ambient temperature are going to use what's called a tent and pond system. So it's going to be a
Oh,
cement base with ponds that are, you know, centimeters, maybe 20 centimeters, like the size of a cement block, sort of that
yeah,
high.
yeah,
You'll have like a 2 by 2 or 3 by 3 meter pond that's just open, and then you
yeah.
can fit those into big greenhouse type of tents. So you'll have hundreds of those ponds across a couple hectares, and the waste and the larvae go into those ponds, and that's where the larvae consume the waste. So then you do have people that are turning it over, that are raking it to sort of let some of the heat out on a daily basis. But
Okay.
the flies are in a different area. The flies are in an enclosed tent. We call them
Yeah.
love tents because that's basically what it
That's
is.
what you're doing. You're getting them to mate and create the larvae.
Exactly. So you take the pupae in there after they go through the pupae process.
The
They
love
hatch,
tent.
become flies. They look for a mate. They mate, and it's usually they'll be like it's really fascinating that whole process. Like there's usually like three that get together, and then whichever male is stronger ends up being the winner. And then the
Oh,
female
really?
goes and lays the eggs. We use these little like eggy things. Everybody in the industry has different ways. Some people use like a ball. Some people use like different pieces of wood that have slats, or on a home level, you could use cardboard, and they're going to lay the eggs into the
On a
side of the
whole
cardboard.
level. So you're going to sell home kits?
There's a lot of those types of things that are happening
Oh,
in
really?
the industry, educational projects or home kits, or now the big trend is moving away from industrial size plants because they've had to raise so much money to do that, and it's more container based. So
Hmm.
people are saying, okay, we developed this proprietary method to do a container, shipping container, whether it's 20-foot or 40-foot container,
Yeah.
and it's vertical farming inside. Usually you'll have one container that's like the fly container. So
Hmm.
they'll have LED lights that attract them because the flies really need sunshine to mate.
How big are these flies?
Um, they're smaller in terms of like you think about black flies in Canada.
Yeah.
They're much more narrow. So if you look at the picture on my LinkedIn, that's a black soldier fly. They're more narrow and they're longer.
Oh, that is. I thought that was a cricket.
No, that's a black soldier fly.
Oh, okay.
So they're actually really pretty little flies. Like you can look up pictures on Google or whatever, and they have really big, beautiful eyes, and they're just a long, slender sort of fly. And they fly kind of slow. So I mean, you could go into the tent and walk around and clean up, pick up the egg trays and all that, and they're not really going to harass you. They kind of fly around, but um,
Yeah.
and then
I
where
just pick one out of and eat it. Just it's
I
good.
always recommend cooking your insects before you eat them,
Oh,
just in
okay.
case. But
I
yeah.
got you. Salmonella, right?
Yeah, it could have all sorts of bacteria like
You have no
on
idea. It
the outside
depends
of the
on
body.
what pond they're in, right?
Exactly. But if you cook them in general, like even something like a cockroach, as long as it's been well cooked, it's
Yeah.
no
Yeah,
big
yeah,
deal.
yeah. And then this stuff is processed and sold as feed or fertilizer.
Yeah. Yeah. So we sell retail on Amazon to consumers for backyard chickens. I mean, that's something we haven't talked about, but the
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
consumer market is
Yeah.
actually huge. So the U.S. and this was partly due to the lockdowns and whatnot of COVID in 2020, but backyard chicken farming just exploded the last 4 years. So
Yes.
the
Yes, it
estimates
did.
are
It did. Yeah.
that like 13% of the population has chickens. Especially millennials seem to love their chickens. It's between 3 and 5 on average per household, and there's some like
Mm.
85 million chickens in the U.S. like that are in households. Not that doesn't include commercial chickens. And so that's been one market that we've gone to on the retail side, just with the dried grubs, because people use them as a supplement or as a treat because chickens love them so much. So it's a good way to like train your chickens to come if you want to do that as a treat, and it's a really healthy one.
You could train a chicken to
Yeah,
like
Yeah, you can train a chicken. And, I mean, not like a border collie. It's not quite that smart, but they do have a
Fetch.
level of training that you can do to get them,
Yeah.
at feeding time to come or to follow you or whatever. Some
Yeah,
people do
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah, the biggest sectors are for sure drawing the larva, turning it into powder, using it as a feed additive. So whether the companies make pellets for fish, or really the final consumer of that protein is going to determine what form it ends up being in. There's some companies that make just the oil, for example, like for piglets. So it's sort of like a health supplement, an antibacterial, antiviral type
Okay.
of supplement. Um, yeah, so there's a lot of different ways that it can be monetized, which is the cool thing. There's even a company in Singapore. I don't want anybody to get mad at me. I believe it's Insecta, but they were experimenting with all different kinds of uh, biodegradable materials and different things you could do with those biodegradable materials using the exoskeletons, and then even extracting the melanin to sell as a melatonin pharmaceutical or a melanin pharmaceutical because they turn really dark, and so I guess they have really high levels of melanin. That's not something I've studied, but the research is out there, and there's companies doing it.
I guess the point of it is that there's all these solutions all around us and all over the place. We
Yeah,
just got to look for them, right?
exactly.
And if we weren't so quick to dismiss the activities or the beliefs or systems, just the structure of other cultures, we could find a ton of these different solutions, right? I
Yeah,
mean, I
absolutely.
mean, I mean, in your travels and going through this, you're quite. I mean, you traveled all over the world, and you're obviously very open minded. I mean, you say, "Yeah, hell, I'll just switch to eating insects. What the hell? See what happens." Oh, my teeth are
Yeah,
hurting.
so I'm going to study that. What's
So I'm
happening?
going to
Exactly.
study that, figure that out. Well, if I cook my vegetables a little more, I can still eat crickets, so that's
Exactly.
good. But
I mean, there's
are
solutions out there. That's nature is
yeah,
incredible. That's the thing. And I
yeah,
think so much gets lost in the politicization of the climate change discussion to where we lose the ability to have a nuanced conversation of how can we really benefit, and it's not just about creating a startup that's going to make billions of dollars, but like where's the real ESG, right? Where's the true environmental, yes, but also social impact? And that's
yeah.
one of the things that I've seen a lot of, especially with smallholder farmers. Or one cool example that I like to share when we were doing the NGO with crickets in Cambodia. Um, there was it's generally something that's people can farm very easily under their houses. So in rural Cambodia, they live in these wood houses that are up on stilts. So at night, like the livestock and whatnot will sleep underneath the house for safety, but also it's up high because many times it's all rice paddies. And
Oh yeah,
so during the rainy season, things tend to flood. And
yeah.
so, they're up on stilts. So there was this one village in particular we were working with, and we heard this story. And I have pictures of the lady, and like I remember interviewing her. It was just so incredible. She had been working for like 12 hours a day at a factory doing clothes because textile in Cambodia is a big industry. So it's a rural village. She would take this tuk tuk like an hour on a bumpy road to get to the factory. She worked 12 hours, an hour back home. I mean, it's not really a life. That's like you're just existing, right?
Yeah.
She had a couple young kids who I guess stayed with grandma back at the house or whatever. But other people in her village were farming crickets. And so she was like, I want to give that a try. And so we helped with a box or a couple boxes. And so she started to farm crickets. And within like 2 months, she's like, I'm making twice as much. She quit her job. She's like, I'm making twice as much as I was at the factory. So instead of $130, $140 a month, I'm making like $300 a month now doing crickets, and I get to stay home with my kids all day. Like it's just her life was completely changed, and it doesn't seem like a lot for us, where it's like $300, like that's poverty. Yes, but it's way better than the poverty she was in previously, making
Yeah.
your Nike shoes or your Patagonia vest or whatever. Not Patagonia, sorry Patagonia. I know you guys are sustainable. Whoever makes their textiles in
Yeah.
Southeast Asia. So it's something where I mean I've seen those types of things, and then also dealing with the industrial scale where you're raising millions of dollars to do something just to make money. But our vision and my personal passion with this is like you can put BSF at the center of regenerative agriculture. So like what homesteads are doing in the US, and you can do it in working with smallholder farmers in more tropical areas. So what we've experimented with the last
Right.
year in Mexico, working with coffee farmers, working even with beekeepers. How can we clean up waste from microbreweries and other waste streams, vegetable waste streams? How can we then use the fertilizer to heal the soil and in those coffee farms and in those areas, those ecosystems, to where now you have better water retention during drought, you have
Hmm.
stronger root systems, you have more healthy flourishing plants. So now these smallholder farmers are getting better crops. You have a better ecosystem for bees, so the beekeepers are stoked because they're getting better quality pollen and honey and propolis and all these things. And it's like I can see that foundation of this whole ecosystem being totally regenerative and focused on cleaning up waste using BSF. And it's not something that maybe is going to make $100 million a year, but the impact it can have on a local or regional level, and it's something that can be done everywhere in the world where these crops are grown, can have a massive impact
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
people and for the sustainability of those environmental ecosystems. So,
Yeah. That I mean, and that's we're gonna end it on that note because that was fantastic.
yeah,
That really was fantastic. And I get exactly what you're saying though. With it's not 100. It's not this massive investment, but that's a lot of the problems that we have right now, anyways. Right? I mean, if we left everything up to the financial institution and the brainwashing that we've done to ourselves, that's part of the issue, right? I mean,
absolutely.
grow and make money at all costs. Well,
Yes.
really? Well, I mean, I'm a capitalist. I believe in a capitalist. I believe in a free market. I believe in all of that stuff. But it is that total disregard for what you're producing that
Yeah,
I think needs
and
to
the
be.
human impact also,
Yeah.
because I think, I mean, capitalism has brought more people out of poverty, right, over the last
Sure.
several decades than anything else. And yet, if you go too much to that side, where it's only focused about squeezing every dollar out as quickly as you can, then suddenly you lose the reason for the benefits of that type of
Yeah,
mutually
no, it's a
beneficial
death
trade
trap. It'll
system.
kill the society. It'll kill the society in a different way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because and you're seeing it. So no, I won't go into it, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
smallholder farmers can really be impacted in a way that nothing else really does. And I think there is a way to monetize it, but that's going to be the trick. Is okay over a period of years instead of 3 to 5 years, and over 10 years, how can we impact these ecosystems to where everybody wins?
right. 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 I
So
love it, dude. Where are people going? I mean, Josh Galt and it's GaltJoshGalt on LinkedIn. They can get in touch with you and figure out what's
yeah,
going on. Where else do they go to learn more about what you're doing here, man?
um, I'm not really promoting anything necessarily. I
Okay,
want to start having these conversations. But yeah, our
fantastic.
our company is Unique Biotech in Malaysia. So it's on our US site is ubsoldierfly.com,
I love it.
and my website's joshgalt.com. So
There you
that's
go,
that
man.
links to
Go there,
everything.
check it out. It's very interesting. It's very cool, and I'll hit you up after the show to get some of your favorite cricket recipes.
Awesome. Well,
I
I've
got
actually
I
got a
got
few.
Christmas coming up, bro.
Yes,
I got Christmas coming up.
I have Thanksgiving and Christmas cricket recipes.
I
Believe it or
believe they actually
not.
sell crickets at the Asian market down the road from me.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
I'm
Yeah.
sure they do.
Or you can get them on Amazon as well.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. I'm gonna
Well, I
have to try
appreciate the
some.
conversation. It's been great. Thank you so
I
much.
loved it, my friend. Thank you so much, everybody. Hey, this has been the Sustainiacs. I'm Mike Vincent. He's Josh Galt. Check him out and see what he's doing. It's really super interesting stuff. And hey, everybody, till next time, peace and love. Hey.